I'm really sorry that this video is late. It's been a real challenge to pluck up the courage to film and start filming this series. I've had to gear myself up. I've been procrastinating for several days, but here I am, and let's see how we get on. Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today's video is going to be the first of a new series of videos that are all going to be grouped together, and they are all about Max. This series is going to give a really good overview of Max. Max as the boy, Max as the our son, Max as the child who was diagnosed with ASD, and how all of that has affected him and us. The first two videos are going to be a general overview of life, Max's life, from birth to diagnosis, and then diagnosis up until today. They will be the first two videos to give a broad idea of what it's been like with Max through those challenges. And then after that, we've decided that we're going to have an About Max section, and we're going to break down all of the difficulties that children with ASD face, and again how that affects their immediate family. So in some of the videos we are going to be talking about things like echolalia, palilalia. We're going to be talking about speech therapy, speech and language. We're going to be talking about schooling and the decisions that we have made around his school, EHCPs, consultant and paediatrician appointments, and everything that we have encountered on our journey so far. So I hope you enjoy this new series. If there's something you are interested in, please make sure that you do subscribe to the channel. It's absolutely free. I've seen a few people saying that on YouTube recently, and I think it's quite important. YouTube is absolutely free when you are asked to subscribe. It's nothing to do with any money. It's purely just so you get notified when we have a new video up. So this video is about birth to diagnosis. I find it really difficult to talk about this. So apologies that the video is late. It's supposed to have gone up on Wednesday morning at 7 UK time. It's now 2 o'clock on Thursday afternoon, and I'm still filming. It's challenging. Talking about it out loud. Yes, here we go. So I've got myself a cup of tea, and I'm going to get comfy, and let's have a chat. Hopefully I won't start hyperventilating again. It's not that much of a big deal. Max is happy and healthy, and we're really lucky. He is such a happy, lovely, polite, gorgeous, clever child who is 8 in a few days' time, and that's how we see it. But we had to go through a really difficult time to get to this stage. And it's something that we try and forget, but I remember whilst we were going through this really difficult time, I didn't know where to turn. So I found it really difficult to get through it. And I'm the kind of glue of the family. I hold everything together, and that works really well for us. But when I'm not holding everything together, it affects everybody in the family. So I think that's why this is a really tough thing for us to talk about. I've decided to do this one on my own because, you know, this is how badly it affects me. And Jake really struggles with everything. He's been through it as well. If you are watching this, he's given me permission to share this with you. Jake is also on the waiting list for an assessment to see if he is also on the spectrum. Jake has issues. Jake has never been one to socialise very well. The only time he successfully speaks to other people is when he's talking anything music related. All of his friends, anyone that he would class as a friend, will actually be a music peer. Essentially, you know, he has made some really, really good friends over the years. I mean, two of these actually were his best men. He had two best men at our wedding. So, you know, they were originally music peers, and they have formed really, really strong friendships, which is fantastic. But yes, Jake, other than, you know, his music friends, he doesn't have any friends. You know, nobody ever comes round to see him. And that's not a kind of violin moment. He's happy with that. And to be honest, so am I. I couldn't do with having some football lager lout sat on the sofa every evening. That's kind of not really what we're about. So I've procrastinated again. I'm talking about everything but Max's diagnosis. So I'm going to bite the bullet and let's get on with it. When I was pregnant with Max, he would kick so hard and so fast that I honestly thought he was going to damage either himself or me. It was unbelievable. So I knew that he was a very different child from Courtney before he was even born. I used to get Jake to put his hands on where he was kicking, because it was, and even Jake was, you know, really shocked at how hard and fast. It was like he was having a tantrum inside me. I've never felt anything like it. It was ridiculous. So I don't know if it's related to ASD. I've never really looked into that. So if you are also an ASD parent and you had something similar, please leave me a comment, because I would love to know if that's an ASD thing. I don't know. But I knew that he was very different to Courtney whilst I was still pregnant. So that was my first kind of clue that this was going to be very different for us. Max was born on the 1st of September. We went in the morning, and I knew I'd be staying at least one night. So if not two, maybe 2 nights we stayed in hospital. So he was born at 9:47 a.m. on the 1st of September. The most beautiful baby boy. I thought he looked just like Courtney, but everyone else thought he looked like Jake. I guess everyone sees what, you know, bits of different people in babies, don't they? So in the recovery room was when I first met him after I was finished in theatre. Jake was already with him and had taken loads of pictures and fallen in love with him. Max was placed onto me for some skin-to-skin contact, and he latched on perfectly the first time and was feeding. It was amazing. I've got some pictures of it which are really special to me, and I couldn't believe that it was all going so well. Later on in the day I was moved around to the ward, and the breastfeeding nurse came round to see me and took one look, and as she came to see me, Max was feeding, and she thought it was amazing too, that it was just such a natural thing. He latched on and he was feeding wonderfully, and it was truly a really beautiful morning for us both. Of course, in true Max style, he couldn't give me a whole day of something going well. It got to probably close to midnight that night. I was on a ward with 5 other mums, and I was all padded out. You know, I hadn't been out of bed yet. I wasn't allowed up yet. And Max decided to let me know what I was in for. I woke up, I must have fallen asleep, and I woke up to this baby screaming. I mean, it was the most annoying sound I think I've ever heard. And I woke up thinking, oh, I'm on the ward with a screamer. And then I woke up a little bit more and realised it was my baby. And it got to probably 5 a.m. and me and the nurses were still trying to figure out why he was screaming. They even took him away to the nurses' station with them, the midwife station, because they said that he couldn't possibly be hungry anymore because he'd been feeding for hours. And they took him away, and within 10 minutes they brought him back because he wouldn't stop. They tried everything they could think of too. So they brought him back and said, and that's when they kind of made a bit of a fort around the bed for me. They said they shouldn't really do it, but you know, this was exceptional. So I just kind of went back to sleep with Max in my arms. We was completely padded out. I had probably about 20 pillows guarding us in the bed, but nothing really would settle him. It's pretty much been the same ever since. It got to day 5. We went home, I think it was 2 nights we were in hospital. So on day 3 we came home. It got to day 5, and for the first week the health visitor, or a midwife, I think, a midwife comes to visit you at home every day. And this lady, who I will never forget for the rest of my life, she walked into my living room, she took one look at me, and then she turned to Jake and said, "Go and buy some formula milk." I was in tears. I was crying tears onto Max. Max was freaking out because he was trying to latch on, but he was in such a state he couldn't. It was not very pleasant. It really wasn't. I was distraught. Absolutely distraught. There was nothing I wanted more than to breastfeed my baby. and it just wasn't happening. It really wasn't. Nobody was happy. So that was the day that Max had his first bottle. So after a few weeks of being formula fed, Max really did settle. We got to the stage of probably 3 months, and he was on the every 4 hours feeding. So it was the 4, 8, 12 and 4 system, and it was working really well for us. It was quite a nice time actually, when we look back. So this continued for quite a while. We really did have a great year with Max. After the once the bottle feeding had started, it went really well. Weaning, he weaned really well, and that was all perfect. All of his milestones, I think he was, smiling and laughing and making, dada, mama, all at the right time. So he didn't really have any concerns whatsoever. I think his first few checks from the health visitor were absolutely perfect. There was nothing picked up at all, and all was really good. We were invited to his 18-month health check as part of, the Red Book, and we went to see the health visitor, and that was the day our ASD journey began. I had already noticed, just from doing my own research from the Birth to 5 books and, some different milestones that every new mum looks at. You kind of want to make sure that your baby's where they should be. And I had picked up that Max wasn't speaking as much as a typical child his age, or most other children his age. But everything I read had suggested that boys are a lot slower than girls. And this was exactly the same information that the health visitor did say to us at his 18-month check. She was a bit concerned about his lack of vocabulary, the amount of words he was saying, and he wasn't joining anything together. But she agreed that boys sometimes can be a bit slow. So she said to us, we'll review it in another 3 months, and then we'll see what happens then. So 3 months later, I was at work one day, and Jake was at home with Max, and he had a phone call from, it wasn't the same health visitor, it was a different one who decided to follow up following the 18-month appointment. The question Jake was asked was, has Max's speech improved? And Jake said yes, because it had. Max was saying new words. He still wasn't joining any words together, but he was saying more words, probably 10 more words in that 3 months. So to Jake, and to me to some extent, he had improved. So when they phoned and asked, Jake absolutely said the right thing. I will still say to this day that I don't think a phone call was sufficient at that time, because we are not the experts. Max had improved, but because we said that Max had improved, they ticked him off their list and we were kind of forgotten. The real difficult time for me was when I saw my niece. She is 9 months younger than Max, and we hadn't seen them for a long time. And my niece, I had a conversation with her, albeit a very basic conversation when she was around 2. But I couldn't believe how much she was saying, and she was 9 months younger than Max. And it was then that I realised that there's something really not right here with Max's language. So I decided to follow up with the health visitor. So Max was just over 2, and I made an appointment to go and see them. And I saw a health visitor, and she was fantastic. It was the same lady who we saw originally at the 18-month check. And so she knew that there were already slight concerns there. And she agreed that, he does have a speech delay, and it's starting to become quite significant. So she referred us to a speech and language therapist, and she also referred us to a paediatrician, just to make sure that there was nothing else going on. She did warn us that the paediatricians are really busy and it may be some time before we're seen, but the speech and language therapist, that appointment should come through quite quickly. We met with the speech and language therapist just a couple of weeks afterwards. It wasn't a very long wait at all. And I remember feeling so angry after the appointment. We went to basically tell her that he has a speech delay, and that he wasn't saying enough words and he wasn't joining. I think by this time he could put 2 very short words together, but that's, it was for his age. By then it was very, very delayed, and it was obvious there was a real issue there. So we saw speech and language therapist, and she assessed Max and did some tried to play some games with him, and spoke to us and bits and bobs. And at the end of the session, she said to us, I don't think it's just a speech delay. I think Max has quite a severe language delay, and not only can he not express himself, he doesn't understand what you're saying to him as parents. And I reacted quite badly and quickly, fired a few examples at her, that if we say to him, put your coat on or put your shoes on, he would do it. And she said quite quickly back to me that it's basically him copying us. If we're all putting our coats on, then he will just copy, and he'll think, oh, we're going out, so he would put his coat on. Or so what I was saying to him didn't matter. The actions were speaking to him louder than the words. And I was really upset at the thought that there could be something wrong with my little boy's brain that wasn't, in his entire language, rather than just he was a bit slow with his speech. I think I was still holding on to the fact that he might just be a bit delayed, and he just needs a little bit of help to get his speech to come out. But it was starting to go down like a more sinister path. And when she said that to me about him not understanding us, I wasn't ready to hear that. And it made me quite angry. After the initial speech and language session, we were referred to some groups. It was a group speech and language session that thankfully was just down the road from where we live, and I think it was once every week, and it was for an hour or 2 in the mornings, and we went every week, and we had a group session, and Max quite enjoyed them, to be honest. he was quite happy there. And we had homework that we had to do at home, which always related to the session that we had done that week. And we did everything that was asked of us. So after a few weeks, the group was finished, and that was it. There wasn't another group starting for, I think, at least another 6 months. And even if we wanted to go along, we had to be referred to it. But it didn't really help anyway, and we were kind of just left to it. Everyone and anyone that we did meet in a similar situation, we were told to keep pressing the paediatrician for an appointment, keep pressing for, all of these things, which we did. We phoned up all the time. It went completely against my nature. I fully understand that people are busy. The NHS is under huge stress. But as a mother, I had to fight for my child. So we were calling up all the time, trying to chase things, and eventually we did get an appointment to see a paediatrician. The paediatrician was awesome. He works with a nurse, and the nurse just took Max away and was weighing him and measuring him, and he just did it. I don't know what, she's obviously trained to encourage these children to do things, but yes, she absolutely managed to get him to be weighed and measured. And whilst all that was happening, and she was playing with him, whilst that was happening, Jake and I were sat having a real grown-up conversation with the paediatrician. So we discussed with him all of the issues that we had faced. He did have a report from the speech and language therapists. He had a report from the health visitor as well. And he had read those, and he took on board what we had to say as well. He was very much of the opinion that parents know their child best, and wanted to hear what we really struggle with. And he was the first person to actually say to us, I think he should go on the waiting list for an assessment for ASD. By this time, Max was 3, and it was that year before we saw the paediatrician. Max really was a struggle. It's so difficult talking about it, because it was probably the worst year of our lives. It was so hard. In that year, so after we found out from the health visitor that there was an issue, to when before we saw the paediatrician, we were kind of left. All we had was these few, probably 6, I think it was, group speech and language sessions, which were for 6 weeks, and then we were, left to our own devices again. So we had this child who couldn't speak, was getting incredibly frustrated with everything every day, which I don't even know how. I don't know how to describe it. when somebody can't communicate with you what they want and you have to try and guess every day, every minute of every day, whenever they need anything, whether it's a drink, something to eat, the toilet, a hug, something to play with, it was not a very nice time. It got to Jake and I one day had the conversation we had the conversation whether we were the right people to be Max's parents. Yeah. The fact that we had both considered that is probably testament to just how hard that year was. It's something I wouldn't wish on anyone. Thankfully, it didn't get very far, the conversation, and the end result was we absolutely are the right people to be Max's parents, but without support of parents of our own, it was really difficult. So let's go back to when we first met the paediatrician. He was fantastic, as I mentioned, and we told him everything that we had gone through, and he completely empathised and said that, you know, he deals with parents like me all the time and we're not on our own, and it felt quite nice, as sad as it is that there are other parents who have to go through the same thing. We wasn't going mad, you know, it wasn't just us, you know, he could see that there was an issue here and we needed to get to the bottom of it. So the assessment day came around, and as you can imagine, as a mum who has Google, we were conscious that he might not be on the spectrum, you know, in which case, what do we do with that? Where do we go next? You know, thankfully, I'm sure that if that had been the case, the paediatrician would have given us advice, hopefully. But I was petrified that, you know, all of these issues at this stage that we were facing, you know, whenever we went out and Max had a meltdown, or, you know, people came round and saw, you know, the way he was acting, our kind of go-to phrase to kind of, you know, justify it was, oh, we're waiting, you know, he might be autistic. And it was kind of like a get out of jail free card. So if he wasn't, what were we going to say then? You know, our child's naughty? I think at this stage as well, it didn't really help that there were people around saying all sorts of these helpful things to us. I remember somebody saying, oh, he just needs a couple of nights around my house, I'll sort him out. What does that mean? What does that mean? What are you going to do? Lock him in a cupboard? Are you going to not feed him until the autism just falls out of him? You know, and there were all of these things. Oh, my kid that, and he was all right. Oh, my child did that and they were fine. Oh, it'll be all right. Oh, I'm sure it's not that. It was really hard to, first of all, even think of the fact that my child could be autistic. Then to have people even doubting that, and thinking that we were, I don't know, almost making it up, or that they could do better at parenting our child, or just all of these things were really hurtful. And I don't think that anybody knows how that feels unless you are the parent of someone on the spectrum. So that is our journey from birth to diagnosis. Sorry that you've had to listen to me go on for so long, but there's a lot to the story, as you can see. It hasn't been an easy, 6.5 years with Max, but we're in a much better place now. I do have another video coming up, so next week on Wednesday there will be the second instalment of the About Max series. So if you are new, please subscribe to the channel and you will be notified when that video is up. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please just leave them down below and I'll do my best to answer all of them, and I look forward to seeing you soon.